Jack. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped but it's no hype. From this height it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. We got a special show for you tonight for the holiday season. I don't want to say Christmas out of respect for the politically correct out there listening tonight, but those that are celebrating, yes, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll be back next week, though, so we'll see you before New Year. Shit. Anyway, we got a bunch of stuff going on all over the world, as always. But we had a great show on Monday, so make sure you go back and check that out on UCY TV's YouTube channel. And check all of our other shows out, too, if you're bored or if you're not digging the vibes with the family over Christmas. Go just sit in the corner and listen to our radio show. Maybe a little bit more entertaining. And then you can start a bunch of arguments with your family because, you know, that's what we do on Christmas around here. No, just kidding. But anyway, we do have a special show in store for you tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a airing of grievances in the spirit of Festivus, which is an ancient Seinfeld tradition. And we got a couple guests on the call tonight that are going to help us air some grievances out there. Anyway, anyone else listening tonight that wants to air your own grievances, feel free to call in. And if you're trying to troll us, don't even try because it doesn't work. 718-717-8296 is the call-in number. And if you do call in, just make sure your radio is on mute and your phone microphone is on mute as well. Otherwise, we'll have to hang up on you. We don't want to hang up on anybody. You can catch us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern here on UCY. Also on the Anti-Media Radio tab. Those that were trying to listen to S.M. Gibson last night, don't worry, he's not dead. He's alive and complaining. No, I'm just kidding. He's alive and well, and I'm actually going to read off of his article from last year because he did a brilliant article on an airing of grievances that is still relevant today because obviously we're still dealing with a lot of the shit that we were dealing with last year, unfortunately, but, you know, we're going to talk about that. But let me introduce my guests on the call. We have Jake Anderson. What's up, Jake?
Not much, Nick. Little sad, actually. I learned that an old friend of mine has passed away. He was literally old. He was 81. He was a legend in Ocean Beach, actually. Old Hermit Dave. He was a comedian, and he would have loved Anti-Media, actually, because he always got on stage and talked about all the war criminals, and he really broke down the distorted media narrative going on. So I'm a little sad to hear of his passing, but happy Festivus nonetheless.
So he was a little bit along the lines of George Carlin, I guess.
Yeah, he was very much. Yeah, he never had much of a punchline, but he definitely got up there, and he wasn't afraid to tell it like it is, and you got to respect a man like that. He started doing comedy at age 73, and I guess he passed away just within the last day or so. So I'm pretty sad about that, but you know, hey, he lived his dream. That's he did more. He got up there and he gave something a shot. You got to respect that.
Hey, 81. He lived he lived a average lifespan, and I'm sure he had a great time out in OB. Living there is always a blast. I lived there for a little while. Anyone that visits San Diego County, I highly suggest that you visit Ocean Beach just to get a feel of it. Most people either hate it or love it. I'm one of the people that love the place. Anyway, we're also joined tonight by Claire Bernish. How's it going, Claire?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to air grievances, I have to say. I'm sorry about your friend, Jake.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna air some grievances too. It's not gonna be all sadness with me, man. I'm gonna get vicious here in a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
me too.
I was watching. I went on YouTube earlier, and I was looking at the Seinfeld video about Festivus and stuff, and it was kind of a funny. Oh, obviously, it's kind of funny, but George Costanza's dad, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about how he came up with this holiday, and it started off because he was at a store trying to get a doll for his son, and then he ended up beating the hell out of some guy because they both had the same doll. And I couldn't help but kind of bring that back to what's going on in modern times with Black Friday and stuff. Because back then, when Seinfeld was going, I think it was probably back in the 90s. That was kind of a joke, but now it's not a joke. People literally do beat the shit out of each other on Black Friday to fight over, stupid little items, gifts, and things for themselves. Plenty of instances this year, plenty of fights. No one died this year, fortunately, but there have been years in the past where people died on Black Friday. In fact, I saw this funny meme back right after Thanksgiving about how marijuana is actually safer than Black Friday because there's been like 8 deaths associated with Black Friday in the past 10 years. Back in the 90s, it was a joke that people would fight over toys and stuff, but now it's reality, unfortunately. And this is the kind of consumerist society.
It started with Tickle Me Elmo, I think.
Yeah, and it kind of tickles me pink to think about that too. No, I'm just but yeah, it really is sad. It's kind of funny, it's, this holiday, Christmas. It's about celebrating the life of Jesus and his birth and the hardships that people had to go through, and Jesus's parents were like refugees more or less, the story really does bring up some kind of sad doses of reality when it comes to the modern day state of affairs. We talked a little bit about that Banksy Christmas card on the last show. Anyone not familiar with that, I definitely suggest you check out Banksy's Christmas card. I'm not going to talk about it again, but there's definitely some crazy parallels going on right now with these old stories, and people are out there beating each other up to buy a bunch of crap that they really don't need to celebrate a holiday that's supposed to be about kindness and goodness and things like that, and instead it's kind of turned into this very consumerist, kind of capitalist holiday that, like many of the other holidays that we celebrate, they've been co-opted and morphed into something that they're not supposed to be. And unfortunately, that's what, for many people, Christmas has become. Who can get the biggest gift? Who could spend the most money? Oh, look what they got me. Look what I got them. This, that, and the other. For me, of course, just like Thanksgiving and all that, it's about spending time with people you care about and that kind of thing. And that's really the good part of it. The other side of it is kind of just like I said, it's kind of become shitty. Anyway, in tribute to S.M. Gibson, who didn't do his show last night for various reasons, I'm not going to delve into those. Like I said, he's alive and well. He probably won't be doing his show tomorrow night either. So I'm going to read this part of this article that he wrote last year because it is still relevant. But it was an airing of grievances, and that's what Festivus is about. Festivus is this fictitious holiday that was kind of made up because after Costanza's dad didn't end up getting the doll that he wanted for George, they said Festivus is for the rest of us, all the people that aren't celebrating Christmas or, for various reasons, they can't afford it or whatever, don't feel the need to do it. But I'm going to go ahead and read off some of these grievances because they're really good and some of them are pretty funny. I'm sick of how all lives are not created equal. I'm sick of people making excuses for the actions of governments all around the world. I'm sick of being lied to by the media. I'm sick of being spied on by the government. I hate politicians saying they have our best interests in mind but don't. I'm sick of going to the airport and being touched inappropriately. I'm sick of the media distracting people by focusing on specific narratives while Washington quietly steals what little freedoms we have left. I'm tired of my tax dollars being sent overseas. I'm tired of the two-party system. I'm really tired of people killing people. I'm disgusted at anyone who thinks they're above the law, which I think was a hint at cops there. I hate how people like Al Sharpton and Sean Hannity use tragedies to line their pockets with money. I'm sick of people believing that Edward Snowden is anything but a hero. I hate that a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Obama, is keeping a Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Chelsea Manning, locked in jail. I'm tired of justice not being served. I'm tired of a banking system that is holding the world's economies hostage. I'm sick of the Federal Reserve. I hate how government spends money killing people, more money killing people than feeding people. I really dislike Dick Cheney. I'm sick of people talking about Jeb Bush running for president. Now, keep in mind, this was written last year before Jeb Bush announced that he was going to run. So, unfortunately, that became true, and now Jeb Bush is running. Now, I would change that. I'm tired of hearing people talk about Donald Trump. Unfortunately, we do have to talk about him here and there because of the awful things that he's saying and the hate that he's stirring up all over the place, and so inevitably we do have to talk about this asshat. But I'm sick of it, sick of hearing it, and there's so many grievances out there, and so I'm gonna pass the mic over to Claire because I think Claire definitely has some stuff, and then we're gonna go over to Jake. And then I think DB is joining us now. I didn't think DB was going to be on the call tonight, but he's here. And then we're going to go to DB after that to air his grievances. So, Claire, go ahead.
I think that a lot of these apply still to me that SM wrote. I think my biggest grievance right now, the one that I really want to air, is that I'm tired of people insisting on dividing and not being empathetic towards each other. It feels a lot like humans have lost their humanity entirely. People are so intent on hating each other for this, that, or the other reason. And instead of hating or, being upset with individuals and individual actions, they make blanket assumptions about entire groups of people. And even when there are positive things going on, and this drives me up a wall, even when something positive happens in the news, people find a reason still to be divisive about it. And some days it almost brings me to tears. It makes me so angry. So that is really the sum of all of my grievances. And then, just about anything associated with war.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, you're so right. There's constant effort out there to divide and conquer, and whether it's organically just happening between people and activists alike, or it's being driven by a divide and conquer agenda. I mean, either way, it's sad to see people, our own friends, our own colleagues, activists that we know fall into that trap. And it really is. It just destroys the momentum that's possible there to build coalitions and have people working together.
I mean, there's no reason on earth that people can't have differences. Difference is what keeps us unique and makes, innovation possible. It makes different solutions possible. It makes life interesting and people interesting. Instead, people just pick any sort of difference and make that a reason to divide. And it's ridiculous. It's absurd. Of course not. We're not going to agree on everything, but we don't have to be divided on every detail either. We can still have vast, swaths of narrative in agreement without having to have all of the details the same. And we would actually make so much more progress if people would understand that.
Yeah, great point. A prime example is kind of, with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the detractors of that, and they take offense that people are focusing on a specific group to focus their activism, But, there's people out there that are out there advocating to help prevent autism. And, when someone's out there trying to prevent autism, you don't say, well, not just people with autism matter, everyone matters. You know what I mean? Like it is such a divisive thing that people are doing, and it really does just show a major undertone of some of the prevailing thought process that are going on around right now. And it's no coincidence that Trump is getting all this support and stuff, because there is a bunch of racists out there, man. There's a bunch of them left. People say racism's dead. It's like, hey, we elected a black president. Racism is no longer an issue. It's like bullshit. And Trump is a perfect example of why it's not. Racism is alive and well. All the detractors of the Black Lives Matter movement, by all means, it's not perfect. But many of the detractors are just underlying racists. They don't want to be upfront about it, so they go about it in different ways. But again, it's just divide and conquer. There's nothing wrong with activists focusing on specific groups of people that they want to help. If you want to help black people, if you want to help orphans, if you want to help people that have some kind of physical ailments, like all the more power to you. There's no reason to sit there and say, oh, well, you can't just care about that because then you don't care about this. It's like, no one's saying that. You know what I'm saying? And again, it's just a way that people divide people up. And it's something that we need to address. And this is what we're doing right now. Jake, I want to come to you next, man. What do you got?
So many different directions I could go in. I guess.
Are you mad at your lentil soup from a couple weeks ago? Still?
What's that? What about the lentil soup?
I'm just.
I guess. I agree with. I share a lot of Gibson's grievances, and of course, what you guys were just talking about. I guess one grievance I have is, I get really watching. I shouldn't watch television, frankly, at all, but it happens to be on where I am sometimes, and I get pretty tired of kind of this distorted representation of reality that we see from not just the mainstream news shows, and not just commercials, although I really can't stand most commercials, just kind of branding products with, just tell me what the product is. You don't have to, pretend like I'm going to fly into the sky holding a dog, it's toilet paper, for God's sakes. Just tell us what it is, I get tired of these distorted commercials trying to create a reality, and really all it's doing is just creating consensus around consumerism, which isn't making anyone any better, really, at the end of the day. But I think I would have to, right now, my biggest grievance would have to just be with mainstream journalists and just how feckless and spineless they are in their coverage of the news. It's just like, they're never telling people the real story of what's going on in the world. And it's so frustrating to see so many people, so many professionals who went to school and have student debts because they got a master's degree in journalism, and now they're just giving it all away to the state, just like, what does the state want me to say? What is the, can I report this or will I get in trouble? It's just like, what happened to intrepid journalism? I like to think that here at the Anti-Media, we like to practice a form of, intrepid journalism. But it's just like, man, to see it on mainstream news, to see so much spineless propagandist nationalism every step of the way, it just sickens me, man. So I guess I'll take this opportunity just to express that sickness.
Great point, man. I want to kind of reinforce what you're talking about. For one, I think that a lot of these journalists out there, I don't think that they don't enter the game saying, look, I'm going to go work for mainstream media and I'm going to puppet government talking points and I'm going to make the government look great and I'm not going to question anything. I think they go in, they enter the game thinking like, dude, I'm going to stir some shit up. I'm going to be the next Gary Webb. You know, I'm going to uncover some shit. I'm going to uncover corruption. I'm going to show, you know, I'm going to figure out what's going on. I think most of these journalists go in there thinking that way. But then the reality sets in, and it's kind of like politics, you know. You got all these politicians that go in, like, you know, you got these politicians that go in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna change shit, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do good, and I'm gonna do all that, and then it's like, oh no, sorry, dude, you know, that's just not reality, you know. There's bigger powers at play, and they kind of tell you what to do, and that's exactly, I think, what goes on with mainstream journalism, and it creates that kind of culture, and then you got the groupthink that sets in, where the journalists, you know, that reality sets in, and then they defend it, you know, and because that's their livelihood, they're not going to sit there and like let people talk shit about what they're doing and just let it fly. They're going to defend it, you know, and then the groupthink comes in. And it's like, oh, well, we got to defend this culture of mainstream journalism because, you know, that's our livelihood. So we got to, you know, reluctantly, even though I personally disagree with it, I can't say that publicly because then I'll be fired, you know. So I got to step up to the plate and you know, fight back. And I've had personal interactions with journalists from outlets like the Daily Dot, which is now turned into kind of a mainstream internet gossip page and stuff like that. And you know, I had this guy out there saying like, "Oh, we're highly respectable journalists. You guys aren't shit because you don't got a masthead and all these, you know, technicality stuff." In the end, they're like posting kitten videos and prank videos and shit like that. And
hard-hitting journalism there.
Yeah, exactly. Hardcore shit, really.
Even Huffington Post has gotten like that recently, man. As soon as they got acquired by AOL, man, they just turned into just. I mean, they post some good articles, definitely. I mean, there's some good writers on there, but just this. I mean, there's some. I take screen grabs sometimes of Huffington Post pages because I seriously just can't even believe it sometimes. The crap that they put on there.
Oh, it's hardcore shit, you know. And I kind of wanted to bring Claire back into this before we go over to DB because I know DB's got a bunch of grievances there as well. I wanted to bring Claire back into this because of what you're talking about, Jake. It kind of led Claire and I into the biggest story that the anti-media had all of 2015, which is this whole Nestle thing. And kind of what you're talking about there is that there was a journalist over at the Desert Sun, which is a newspaper here in Southern California, but it's owned by USA Today, which obviously is a major media company, and I can't even remember who USA Today is owned by, but they're owned by an even bigger company. But everyone's familiar with USA Today.
We've only got like 5 or 6 choices there of who they're owned by.
Yeah. Time, you know, it's one of the big 5. But you can tell, and I stumbled upon this article about Nestle. And I can tell that the journalist that wrote it, I can't remember his name now. Claire, what was his name?
The original journalist?
Yeah.
Ian James.
Yeah, this guy named Ian James at the Desert Sun wrote this really, really information-packed article about Nestle and how they were taking a bunch of water out of Southern California for almost nothing, and had to do with a bunch of shady dealings, expired permits, backdoor deals, all kinds of stuff like that. But you know, reading the guy's article, I can tell that he wanted to swing his bat at Nestle as hard as he could, but then I could also tell that his editors were just saying, no, dude, no, dude, no, dude, no, dude. You have to, like, stick to this, you know, don't swing too hard. Just put a little bit of information out there. Don't let it hit too hard. We don't want to stir up, you know, we don't want to ruffle any feathers, right? But that's where kind of we came in, and I found the story, and I passed it over to Claire, and Claire started researching it and investigating what was going on over there. And it wound up being like more or less our biggest story of 2015. We made the front page of Reddit. I don't want to take full credit for it, but it helped lead to a lawsuit to put an injunction on Nestle pulling water. But you know, there definitely is journalists out there that are within the mainstream ranks. And I think maybe, you know, Glenn Greenwald is kind of a prime example. You know, he was laying in wait over at Salon, and then he was at The Guardian, and then he was, and then Snowden kind of recognized his talent and passed him those leaks, and now he's over at The Intercept, and now The Intercept is just killing it with this anti-establishment journalism and stuff. So I think there definitely are journalists out there that are kind of, playing the game, part of these establishment media outlets, but in reality they really understand. They know what's going on. They don't like being part of it, but unfortunately that's what pays the bills for a lot of these guys right now. And so they have to play that game.
Yeah, and I actually reached out to Ian James and tried to talk to him about, the investigation and said, hey, I can tell that there's a lot going on here and that you are kind of being a little restrained in what you're saying, and, is there any way we could collaborate, and maybe I can voice some of what you want to but, aren't really able to through your outlet, and blah, 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 whatever. And, eventually I got in touch with activists in the ex-Forest Service people who had been researching the Nestle case, and they said, oh, yeah, Ian James is going to talk to you, of course he will, and he never got back to me. And I think that it's that whole kind of crunch hold that mainstream, corporate outlets and their masters have over the journalists that are beneath them. And it's unfortunate, but that means a lot of the time that mainstream outlets they're not going to give you the whole story, and you have to go digging. And people mistake a lot of, I think, what outlets like Anti-Media does as being really subversive and, just anti-everything, and that's not really the case. It's more like we're doing a lot of what mainstream journalists either won't do, aren't able to, or just don't feel like doing.
Yeah, and I think for the most part they're just not allowed to, and all these guys are under contract. They're not allowed to talk to certain people. They're not allowed to say certain things. And I think that was the case with this guy at the Desert Sun. He literally is not allowed to talk to us.
Definitely.
But we blew this case wide open, and he put us on the trail to it without doing it himself. But this kind of stuff, and Jake, as you were saying, man, it's very prevalent. And I'm glad that people in 2015 have come a long way in seeing through the narratives and stuff like that. I think we're making progress in some ways. In some ways, I think we're having setbacks with the whole fear-mongering thing, Islamophobia, racism. I think we've suffered major setbacks in 2015 on that front. While at the same time we've made major gains. I think the Black Lives Matter movement has made major gains. I think they've brought the racism issue to light more than it's been in 50 years or so. But at the same time, it's drawing out the racists too. And so then, we got to be careful not to get discouraged by all these racists out there, Islamophobes, xenophobes. They're out there, man. This is kind of a mindset that lays in wait, and it's silent for a while, and the right factors kind of draw it out. Whether it's Donald Trump, Black Lives Matter movement, that mindset's there, and now it's being drawn out. And thankfully, I think, because now we can see it, and we can find out who our friends are that are thinking that way. We can talk to them. We can find out, people will speak publicly about this stuff. We could talk to them, figure out why they're so hateful, why they don't like certain people, and why they hate Muslims, and why they don't like black people, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's good that this stuff is being drawn out in many ways, because now we can, see it and talk about it and kind of confront it where it is, where we see it. That being said, I want to bring DB into this conversation. DB, you there?
Yeah, man, I'm here. I was late for a good reason. We're kind of ground zero up here. Before I moved up here, I've been here almost a year. I didn't realize exactly what it was like up here, but today I went and checked out the Mall of America and found out that was a big dupe from Black Lives Matter, and they actually pulled it as a distraction, and they rerouted the mass of their people and went over to the airport here and pretty much blocked it up, and then were forced into a back lot, and the cops were pretty heavy-handed. Especially, really, what I really noticed was that they were targeting people that wouldn't give them any kind of a physical altercation, basically the smaller and the weaker of the group. And it kind of changed my perception a bit of cops. It made me realize they really are wolves and not sheepdogs, at least the mass majority of them. They're not here to protect the flock whatsoever. And it's just a prevailing thought up here that, back in San Diego, the racism's not really an issue. It's really not. You'll find people that are, like in Lakeside, Nick, and there's particular areas where people hate on other people. Up here, it's pretty endemic, and I was pretty surprised about that because, after all, the Twin Cities are where the Underground Railroad ended. So people came up here to work lumber jobs. They were escaping the South. They were, welcomed as labor. And the initial settlers here, the Swedish and German settlers, mostly Lutheran, who are very, very, giving people, were totally acceptant of them. And things have really changed, man. The organizer, Miski Nora, was saying, we can't sit idle anymore. We can't just, protest in front of the state capitol or the police precinct here, the 4th precinct, because nothing's happening. And there's a huge backlash going on because people here are mostly worker drones. I mean, I hate to say it, but they really are. They're not people that are open-minded and flexible in the way of their thinking. And this is really shocking them to the core. And what I've realized is that the people here that are protesting, they have a time frame where they're not going to, continue to use peaceful means. That was one of the things where I was, realizing people in the crowds were saying, if this doesn't work, if this doesn't wake people up, what are we going to have to do? Are we going to have to sabotage the light rail line? Are we going to have to block freeways with, some even people were saying, using maybe possibly explosives to do that. And it's just built into this complete firestorm. I don't think people realize this is Selma 2015. Right up here. It's weird I live here now. It's weird it's happening here. But it's real. I don't know if the media spurred it, but these sentiments have been here at least for 50, 60 years, and they haven't gone away, man. And it's such a culture shock for me to come here. I'm a white male, man, so I don't have to deal with a lot of the bullshit these people do, and I understand it. I do understand that, you're never safe, you're never comfortable, you don't even feel like you're in your own country, because at any time a cop here, not necessarily kill you. I did do backup research, and only 10 black men have been killed in Minnesota since 2004, one a year, which is, it's not a huge number, and it's not a huge problem here. But the problem is the people here don't care. If you haven't been directly affected, they're saying, oh, you blocked the Mall of America. I can't go shopping. I can't spend full price on all these crappy Chinese-made slave labor goods. And then when, they got to the airport and blocked people, and I saw people, running from cabs a mile down the road because, they couldn't get curbside, it made me realize that a lot of this movement's pissing off people, a lot of it's bringing people together, but it's definitely dividing. And I'm pretty sure by now this is kind of, what they expected, maybe what they wanted,
Definitely, man. But, as you mentioned, marching in front of these Capitol buildings and in front of police buildings and stuff, it's from my personal experience here in San Diego, it's pretty, relatively ineffective. And as most things go in this country, it all goes back to economics, right? If they can shut down the Mall of America, if they can shut down the airports, then they're going to start getting people's attention. You circle around the Capitol building, big deal, You got a couple hundred cops out there. You're never going to get inside the building. Nothing's going to get done. You're never going to get inside the police station. You shut down the airport, then what? You know what I mean?
Well,
shut down the mall.
It's a scary sentiment that they're at the end of their rope now, where they're not even thinking about 2016 and the elections. They're not even thinking about trying to use the system anymore. They're just saying it's irrevocably broken for us, and we're never ever ever going to get the justice like you do because the police look at me differently. And man, I understand it. I really do. And it's a prevalent idea up here that the man is against certain segments, and he absolutely is, man. And you'll see when you visit me up here, they've stuffed certain segments of the population into certain areas and just crammed them in there and put all the cops there. And it's similar to like a Gaza type situation, man, where if you go certain areas, all the cops are in one spot. You come out to the suburbs, there's nothing, nobody gets messed with. And it's endemic, I think, of a lot of the parts of the country where, me and you didn't grow up, man. Like, it's still here.
Yeah, man, because, out here on the West Coast, it's kind of the new world. We don't have all those old scars that the old world has over there on the East Coast, the North, and the South. I was doing some research recently on after the Black Lives Matter activists actually confronted Hillary Clinton, and they told her to her face that she was at least partially responsible for the state of mass incarceration right now. And they were actually completely right on that. Hillary Clinton replied back saying, "Oh well, you guys need to just pass laws and stuff. You guys need to focus on legislative activism so that you can just pass laws. And that's how we did away with segregation. And look how well it worked." And literally, that's what Hillary Clinton was saying. But after hearing those statements, I went and did some research, and I found that segregation is still majorly prevalent. In fact, it's the worst up in the Northeast. And it's not because they're like forcing people to be this way or that way, but it's by economics and by like zoning and subtle factors they still use to enforce segregation. And as you said, DB, in your area, it's still going on in a very prevalent way. And as you mentioned, here in San Diego, it's a bit different. In the city I'm in, where the anti-media offices are located, Chula Vista, while I was doing the research on the segregation, I found that the city I live in is the fourth least segregated city in the entire country. And that's why, for me, like you said, you don't see it around here as much. But you go to these areas where all these, things have been in place for so long, that these problems are still very, very prevalent. And since most of America, they either live in the big cities or they live in the suburbs surrounding them. Well, if you live in the suburbs, you don't see these problems. You know what I'm saying? So you assume that they're not there. And I think that's part of the big problem there, is that people just assume that it's not there. And when people try to raise these concerns, it's like, oh, well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Stop complaining, Stop complaining that cops stop you twice a week or whatever, just because of the way you look, That doesn't happen. Well, yeah, it doesn't happen in the suburbs where you live, but it does happen to people that live in the inner cities, And so I think in many ways people need to get their heads out of their asses, start realizing what's going on, start watching YouTube videos of what's actually happening, and stop watching Fox News that's going to just tell you that people are overblowing a bunch of this stuff, because I'll tell you right now, that's not the case. Anyway, DB, we're doing a little Festivus airing of grievances. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole Seinfeld concept.
Well, if we were all in one studio, we'd be doing feats of strength, probably, right?
Yeah, and we'd have a tall silver pole too. That was the tree, because Frank Costanza finds tinsel distracting. So
I got that. I'm building it out of tall cans of beer.
Nice, a scepter, a beer scepter. All right.
Yeah, there you go. So DB, you're next, man. Air 'em out.
I mean, I more or less already kind of what I alluded to was, can we please, for once, can people just kind of stop and see that the media runs propaganda 100%. There was a law passed that made that legal under the War Act as of World War II. That never stopped. There's still a Department of War. And that's what they're there for, man. They're there to create war. When you think of the media, they're not there for any other reason. It doesn't matter if it's war abroad or if it's war right here at home. They all fuel the same puppet masters. So my grievance is stop. Think what you're reading, think what you're watching, think about things that are coming to you on your Facebook and your Twitter and these little, these mass media vehicles they're using to shape public opinion and change your mind about things and push you into a little corner. The world is a huge place. America is a small part of it. It is not big. If we didn't have our military, we wouldn't be shit. Just remember that, and just remember that, every time you read something, somebody's trying to manipulate you. And they're trying to change your mind through discourse before inevitably they use force. And that's what we've got to kind of cut off. We can see the government trying to push gun confiscation agendas, push war against Syria. These things only end with death, destruction, and misery for you and your family. Stop buying into it by all means. And if you need to do things, drastically like BLM did up here for your own group, for your own, people, for whatever grievance you have, just do it, man. Make it happen, because people are not going to wake up until it gets super bad. And if it gets super bad here, there's no coming back. So let's try to stave that off.
Great point, man. Great point. And it kind of ties in with what Claire was saying earlier regarding the divisiveness that's flying around out there. And I want to tie this into the grander scheme of things a little bit here, because as you mentioned, DB, the whole propaganda campaign that's going on is just support the empire, right? Support the wars that are going on. Don't question any of the foreign policy, and let the government do their thing overseas, and let us continue this empire by any means necessary, whether it's bombing a Doctors Without Border Nobel Peace Prize winning organization hospital in Afghanistan, or whether it's bombing out civilians in Syria, or toppling governments in Libya, or whatever it is. They don't want us questioning that stuff. And it goes back to what Claire was saying, and I believe why the narratives right now are so divisive is because a divided populace would never be able to stop a war, right? If we can never agree on anything, how the hell can we agree to stop any wars? And so that's exactly
not only not stop a war, but you can't start a revolution or anything else either.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, man. If we're not going to come together and realize who's keeping us in shackles, which is like Bernie says, man, and I hate to pump politicians. I feel the guy's a bit different, but he was saying, man, billionaires run this country like it's a freaking colony. And that's what we still are, man. We are a colony, and we're not treated any differently. Your bank note, a.k.a. your social security number and your birth certificate, makes you chattel. Why do people not understand that the people that rule over us, not our leaders, not our politicians, but literally our monarchy, are using you as collateral, collateralizing your labor from birth and building up a trust? Everybody in the U.S. that's born here has at least $2-3 million sitting in a trust. That's why you can go into bankruptcy and you can run debt up. They just take it out of your trust. So just realize that, man. We're not a country. We are a company. If we want to take our country back, we have to push these fools out and get them out of the country.
Great point, man. On that... All right, man. That was a little more inspiring than I thought your airing of grievance was going to be. But on that point on Bernie Sanders, he actually made a great point earlier today in an op-ed for the New York Times. Bernie Sanders called for a full and independent audit of the Federal Reserve. And people who listen to the show, people that have seen my writings, know that I'm not a big fan of Bernie Sanders. I think he's pretty awful on foreign policy and many other things. But, got to give credit where credit is due. The Federal Reserve is one of the single largest drivers of this system. They finance all these wars, and they finance the banking system, the Wall Street. I mean, in fact, in Bernie's op-ed, he has a great quote here, and I'm going to read this whole excerpt here. He goes, "What's wrong with the Fed? The chief executives of some of the largest banks in America are allowed to serve on its boards. During the Wall Street crisis of 2007, Jamie Dimon, the chief executive and chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase, served on the New York Fed's board of directors while his bank received more than $390 billion in financial assistance from the Fed. Next year, 4 of the 12 presidents at the regional Federal Reserve banks will be former executives from one firm, Goldman Sachs." And so, he really went out on a limb and just went at the Fed, dude. And the Fed, like I said, it's one of the worst problems and one of the biggest issues here in the United States, one of the biggest drivers of inequality. And as we've talked about religiously on this show, many of the societal issues we have in the United States are economic driven. Economic inequality is largely to blame for a lot of the societal ills that we have, whether we're talking about violence, crime, robberies, racism, xenophobia. All that stuff can kind of be traced back towards economics and, economic insecurity, and people are, scared of where their next paycheck's coming from. In fact, a huge amount of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. I think 75% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's a pretty rattling number. And so therefore you have a bunch of this economic insecurity and everyone's looking for someone to blame, right? And that's why Trump comes in able to say that it's the Muslims and the Mexicans, and everyone's like, yeah, he's right. But then you got Bernie Sanders over here saying, hey, let's look at the Federal Reserve, and so you got to give credit where credit's due. He definitely is making a great point here on the Fed, and it does need to be completely audited independently so that we can see what in the hell it's doing. The Fed is behind a lot of the financing of covert operations and money. With the Fed, they're the ones that are in charge of printing the money for the country and for all the banks and for the world, in fact, because the dollar is the main reserve currency. We know the yuan is become one of the reserve currency, but the dollar is
the renminbi.
the petrodollar is the main reserve currency, and the Fed kind of dictates all of those policies and how much money is going to be printed and the interest rates and all that stuff. We know that they just raised interest rate slightly, and that's going to have its own repercussions. But I definitely want to give it up to Bernie Sanders for calling out the Fed in the New York Times. That's huge. A lot of people, I mean, the Fed, I don't think it's even been brought up yet in the political conversation so far in 2015 for the 2016 elections. The Fed has not been brought up until now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, I'm not a guy that, falls for politicians, and I consider him more of a statesman, man. He's just a regular guy. But I was talking to somebody earlier, and he said, why do you support Bernie at all? He doesn't do anything about the Fed or foreign wars. So I researched it, and, I found out about the Federal Reserve Sunshine Act of 2009. And the guy did try to get it audited 6 years ago, and of course it got shot down. So as far as foreign wars go, I was raised Jewish, Bernie's Jewish, and he's got that die-hard kind of, I'm going to support Israel no matter what. And maybe we can, get through to him that it's an apartheid kind of government at this point. I don't think Israelis are bad. I think their government's absolutely evil. And I think even the people living there are starting to understand that. And, if we're going to air any grievances, the Federal Reserve, this is what it does, just real simply in a nutshell, if nobody understands. It's a private corporation. It pays the Crown, it pays the Vatican, and it pays 13 families. Roughly 90% of everything made goes to those three sources. It allows the country to run its domestic budget on printed fake money with nothing backing it up. And then our military survives on a black budget from drugs, from gold, from prostitution, whatever you want to call it, anything dirty in the world, it funds our black budget. So if you want to know why the military industrial complex won't stop, it's because they don't rely on the economy. They rely on the dirty, basically they rely on the spiced road economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty much right there, except the dollar is backed by, it's no longer backed by any gold or any asset like that. It's backed by a different type of precious metal, which is
B2s.
It's steel in the form of tanks and jets and titanium and bombs and stuff like that. And any country that doesn't want to fall in line, whether it be Iraq or Libya or Syria, anyone that doesn't want to go along with the petrodollar and the monetary system and use the U.S. dollar as its reserve currency, well, then that's the backing. It's military backing, and that's exactly what we do now. Is we topple countries, we start wars to maintain this monetary system, which is no longer backed by a credible asset. It's backed by the force of a gun. And that's
suddenly they find they need either democracy or humanitarian aid.
Yeah. Libya needed democracy because, by all means, they had the highest standard of living in the entire continent of Africa until we overthrew the government. Now it's a failed state in the midst of a civil war with over a dozen different powers trying to compete to who's going to rule. And not only that, but now ISIS has taken a whole city over in Libya and has a beachhead there now and stuff. And so.
But can we go over the article that you guys kind of shared from Free Thought Project about? I don't know if people understand this right now, but there is an internal civil war already going on. The Pentagon is absolutely 100% against the executive branch and the intelligence apparatus. We literally are fighting ourselves in Syria. I hope people understand that. So, Nick, me and you talked about this 5+ years ago at least, about how we thought the military would go against the military and we'd have to take the government out. And it's following that, man. People, the rank and file in the military, do not want to go die for these billionaire class people anymore, and they understand it. And they can fire as many generals and they can fire as many lieutenants as they want and put a bunch of leaders that are probably satanic in there, and it doesn't matter. We're going to get eventually a conflict at the ground, person to person. You're going to have to make a choice.
Yeah, there's a article. I think Jake and Claire are both familiar with it. It was from Seymour Hersh, which is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and researcher, who was talking about how there's a schism going on between military people and the executive branch, which controls the CIA and all that stuff. And the article kind of talked about how the Obama administration and the CIA were very much in line with arming radical jihadists in Syria to overthrow the Syrian government. And people within the military were like, dude, we're sick of sending our guys over there to die in these cooked up wars where that can be prevented by good policies. And so there was actually more or less some people are calling it a mutiny within the ranks of the military, where they started sharing intel with Assad and with the Russians to try to prevent the rise of ISIS, more or less, in Syria, because the guys in the military kind of saw this stuff coming. And if you look back, and Claire covered this, the classified DIA document that kind of predicted that ISIS was going to be the result of the policies that were going on over there. So these military guys that had access to that document probably were like, damn, we got to do something about this. Meanwhile, the Obama administration and his handlers and the CIA and all that, all they did was act to exacerbate the issue and make the problem of ISIS worse, create a bigger vacuum for them to fill. And the guys, a lot of the guys in the military were like, dude, no, this is not how we want to do this. We don't want to create more terrorism. We want to stop terrorism. This is what you guys say you want to do. Like, you say you want to stop terrorism. Well, why aren't we doing it? And so they took matters into their own hands, and they started sharing intel with the Assad government and the Russians. I mean, this is a bombshell revelation here, and I'm still waiting to hear more come out from it, because right now we're kind of relying on one journalist's account. I mean, he's a very credible guy. Seymour Hersh, like I said, he's won. I think he won the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, he's a very credible journalist.
Yeah, he is definitely a good source, and I'm hoping that there's more to come from him.
He almost sounds
or from somebody else, for that matter. But
in the interview with Amy Goodman on the Democracy Now!, I read the transcript. I didn't listen to it, but he almost seems reluctant. I almost want to say scared. He seems
sure he is.
He seems very unnerved, and he was defensive towards some of the questions. Yeah, I mean, he's gotten himself into some pretty crazy. I mean, it is a bombshell story. That is nuts to think of it's what he's describing is nothing less than a military coup.
Well, it's against us too. That's what people need to understand. Obama fired all the people that didn't want to do this. So how legitimate is he? How are all these executive orders he's putting out have any legitimacy at all, dude? The guy's absolutely against the American people. If you don't understand that now, wake up.
So what you're saying is you support Trump? No, I'm just joking. That's what
I think you know who I support, man. But I don't even like the process.
That's what the trolls would be telling us out there, because obviously, if you criticize a Democrat, then you're a Trump lover, and if you criticize Trump, then you're voting for Hillary.
I'm voting for D's nuts with Sanders as VP.
Yeah, I was going for the Vermin Supreme / D's nuts.
Ah, that reminds me, man. I gotta follow up and I gotta follow up on D's nuts and see what's going on and write about that, man. What the hell happened to that dude?
Yeah,
I think he came and he went.
I'm sure you guys saw that poll the other day. Let me pull it up. There was a poll the other day about how a bunch of people, I think it was 30% of Democrats, 30% of Republicans and 19% of Democrats said they'd be willing to bomb the city of Agrabah, which happens to be a fictional city from Aladdin, the Disney movie. And so 30% of people are like, yeah, I'd bomb that place, if they were threatening us. And 19% of Democrats are like, yeah, let's do it, and they were all for it.
Let's do it.
It was from public policy polling. These are the same people that threw D's nuts into the polling equation. But you have to wonder, because when the whole D's nuts thing broke, Jake, you wrote the article about how D's nuts was like out polling most of the Republican presidential candidates. I mean, it was funny. He's polling at 9%. Like, he was polling better than he was tied up with Marco Rubio at the time. You know what I mean? But now he's mysteriously disappeared from the polling numbers. I think because it had become such a big embarrassment for the government to see that, people are willing to support D's nuts over top of Marco Rubio.
The government just disappeared D's nuts.
D's nuts is probably locked away in some FEMA camp somewhere, man. I mean, I hope he's all right.
Yeah.
Jake, what were you gonna say, man?
Oh, I mean, I just want, yeah, I mean, I want to find out why, who was it? Was it Real Clear Politics? Who was it that was put him in the polls? What did you just say?
Public.
ProPublica.
No, hold on.
Whatever they're called. Yeah, no,
policy polling.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just want to find out what the hell happened, man. I mean, and I said it in my article. I said, like, this. People should not underestimate the significance of something like that. It's the ultimate culture jam. It's satire on the highest level, where it's literally lampooning our entire system. And for that to show up on a poll, it just makes a mockery of the whole system. And it's also something that everyone can unite behind. Libertarians, left, right. Anyone who's anti-establishment and sick of the process could have rallied behind something like that. One, it's quite funny, and but it's just the power of that. I really didn't want people to underestimate it, and sure enough, they did what I thought they would do. They got rid of. I mean, they killed it because it's too big of a threat, man. That kind of satire, it can go a long way.
I just hope D's Nuts is not in Guantanamo right now. You know, you never underestimate the power of D's Nuts.
No, never. And no, I mean, I guess after Christmas, I'll put my feelers out and see if I can find out what he's doing, what happened, what he's if he has any plans for the future in terms of I
heard he's just coming and coming and coming.
He needs to get a website up, is what he needs to do, and really start cultivating the movement. You know, hopefully, he's a younger guy.
I'm sorry. I was disappointed that a lot of people were saying that it was like just really stupid, and I think people really did not. A lot of people did not get the significance of that particular. Yeah.
He was a young guy. I mean, he was like, was he actually a teenager? I can't remember.
I think he was like at least no older than 18.
Hopefully he is, not was. But yeah, I mean I think he gets it, and he sounded pretty naive in the interviews I heard with him. Naive in terms of just like, yeah, I mean, I just want to get the message out there and whatnot. But hopefully he realizes that I mean, this could be kind of like a movement, kind of like no shopping Friday. What is it, the day where they say don't shop on this day?
Black Friday.
Well, no, but there's turn off the television day. Hopefully, I mean, it could be a movement like that, where people who are, it could be it's one of those things where it's people who were even against voting could get behind it, because you're not really voting, you're using your vote to show the inefficacy of the system itself. And that's what I think that's the thing I find so fascinating about it, is what if you could actually get people who were against voting to vote?
D's Nuts is probably the top story of 2015, man. And it's been buried. Nobody wants to talk about him anymore. They're literally, man, and I'm not even joking here, they're afraid of this guy, or this idea of D's Nuts, because it really could make this whole thing look silly, because it is. I mean, shit, Donald Trump running makes the thing look shitty, and that was one of my most popular op-eds, is how Donald Trump turns the whole system into a joke. I mean, the system's been a joke for a long time. I mean, it's been labeled an oligarchy by several top university studies, and I think D's Nuts can kind of accentuate that idea that, it really is just become a mockery. The politicians don't represent us anymore. There was another study that showed that they analyzed a bunch of policy decisions and laws that were passed, and it showed that like 90% of the laws were basically dictated by the rich, and only 10% reflected the public opinion. Anyway, that's the Anti-Media Radio Show for tonight. Make sure you catch us Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. This week, maybe a few days off because of the holidays and stuff. Merry Christmas to all you people out there celebrating that kind of thing. Happy holidays to all you atheists.
Happy Festivus.
Thank you. Happy Festivus.
Here we go through the stereo.